So Liverpool need a new centre back. I think we all know that at Liverpool, but who do Liverpool sign? That is the big question. Guys, let me know the thoughts in the comment section, man. It's an interesting topic, it's an interesting subject at this moment in time because obviously with Kanate, leaving, we thought he was gonna stay, and then you kind of still had Van Dijk and Kanate still at the football club, which then meant Leoni and Jacquet, both players, Leoni obviously here from last season, but getting injured, Jacquet coming in as a new signing, being allowed to kind of, what I say, like bed them in, without there kind of being that pressure of like, okay, we need you to kind of do something now, right? Now, obviously, and listen, look, the window's still long, so we've got quite some time before the window does end. I'm not sitting here saying that Liverpool won't sign anybody. I'm just trying to think and look. I would love to know. And this, obviously, listen, I've said before, Liverpool's biggest issue is the midfield position. I still believe that. That is definitely one area. I'm just also looking at the other areas of the pitch, right? And I think defense is definitely one place that I look at. And I think to myself, I mean, Liverpool have got Virgil van Dijk, they've got Joe Gomez, if you count him there, but let's count him in here for now. You've got Leoni and you've got Jacquet. You've got four centre backs. So really and truly look at that and you do think, oh, okay. Other than Joe Gomez, none of them can play any other position. So now you're like, okay, so they're quite limited in what they can do, right? They can only play in that one position. So it's not like we can spread them out into other areas of the pitch like Manchester City can do, like Arsenal can do. We can't really do that at this moment in time. So now you're really looking at it and you are thinking, okay, so does that mean Liverpool go out and sign a centre back? Well, we don't know. That is one of the big questions. We don't know. I mean, I've seen conflicting reports as to whether or not Liverpool will sign another centre back because on the one hand, you look at it and think, okay, well, maybe Iraola will have faith in the two young centre backs, and he thinks, you know what, I can just go into the season with these guys, maybe another youth player thrown in there, but I don't personally believe he could do that. I do think he's going to need some level of, Premier League, especially experience. But if you're not even looking at Premier League experience, I'm just saying some top level experience, alongside someone like Virgil van Dijk. Virgil van Dijk, in my opinion, is going to slow down. I do think that next season you're going to see that a lot more in his performances, in the way that he plays. I'm not saying he won't be the Rolls Royce. I'm not saying he's still not going to be the Virgil van Dijk, I guess, that we know and we've seen over the years, but it's not going to be at that kind of same level. So we're going to need to be able to facilitate his kind of, would I say, leaving party, so to speak, because this is his last year, of his contract. It's not to say he's going to be poor, rubbish, shit, or anything like that. It's just, can we think a little bit? I understand you do look at Leone, you do look at, Jacquet and think, okay, boom, these guys are for the future. I mean, I don't know many 18, 19, well, let's say 19, 20 to 21-year-olds who are partnering themselves at the back and they are winning things, unless they're exceptional talents. I can't really remember. I mean, obviously, you've got Pau Kubasi, but he's not partnered, alongside another 19-year-old, and again, Kubasi is already at the world-class level, in his own position. So yeah, I mean, unless Jacquet and Leone obviously are performing at that level, which not ruling it out, because I know people get touchy with these things. I'm not ruling it out, but I don't see that at this current moment, in time. I think Liverpool have a real problem, at the back there. And listen, there's been so many names thrown about. I mean, you had Van Heck, who's now gone to Spurs. That's someone I would have loved to have seen at Liverpool. I think he's a really good centre back, really underrated in my personal opinion. Senesi being able to go on a free again to Spurs as well. You're looking at that and you're thinking maybe that could have even have just been the stopgap. And we use the word stopgap, and I know people don't like it, but let's just say it's someone who can facilitate the nurturing and the development of Jacquet and Leone, so there's not that much, pressure again on those two individuals, and that you're not keeping him long term. Obviously, if he performs, then great, but you're keeping him for the next 2 to 3 years. I think quite a lot of people frown upon that. I don't know why. Those are the best signings that I usually find, the ones who don't really stay that long, but they stay for a little period of time, and they can kind of help bridge the gap for the next stage of your team, of your club, and things like that. Some people don't like it. Me, I love those kind of signings because they're usually the ones who help out more than the others who stay for a very long time. So yeah, he was definitely one player I kind of looked at. Listen, there's so many players across the continent. I'm not going to sit here and say that one, I've watched all of them, but also I'm also not going to sit here and lie and try and pretend like I rate a lot of them, because I don't. The ones I do rate are already at the clubs that, they're not going to move. Willem Pacho, big up Michael Torts because he spoke about him quite some time back before he moved to PSG. Missed the trick, obviously, on him. Pau Kubasi is obviously at Barcelona. There are several other centre, Upamecano, I think he signed a new deal at Bayern Munich. He's definitely a centre back that I rate quite highly. So yeah, keeping Konate just seemed like the easiest thing to do. I'll be so honest. Like, it just seemed like it was just easier to keep him. Now you're in this kind of fix where you don't really know what you're going to kind of do next. And again, you've got a centre back in your team now, whereby, it's a bit like, well, we don't know what Virgil we're going to get. We didn't know what Salah we was going to get last season, and that's the Salah that we got. We don't know what Virgil we're going to get next season. Do we want to wait and see? We don't really want to do that. How good are Leoni and Jacquet going to be? Leoni just coming back from injury. Jacquet just coming back from injury. I just feel like it's some unnecessary pressure for no reason. So I do think Liverpool do need to sign a centre back, and it does need to be someone who's quite experienced. Again, doesn't need to be Premier League. I would just prefer it, but like in terms of the ones I think Liverpool should sign, and I've only got two that I've looked at, and I said, if it's not my money, of course, but if I had to choose defenders, and I would say I want this guy, I want that guy, these are the two players. So we'll go with the first one. This one's one who obviously he's been linked a bit with Liverpool over the past year, kind of. And obviously Maxence Lacroix, obviously over there at Crystal Palace. I think he's a really, really good centre back. Someone who's relatively quick. So again, I think partnering him with Virgil van Dijk would work absolutely fantastically. I think just having someone else there. And then I also think if Virgil can't play, or you want to rest Virgil, I think he's got the leadership qualities to be able to lead that back line. That back line's going to be relatively young when you think about it. You've still got Kirkes, you've got Connor Bradley, obviously, if he plays there, Frimpong. We're not talking about guys who, we're not talking about veterans here. Do you know what I mean? We're talking about kind of young players. So it's going to need a bit of leadership. I think he can give you that. I think he's shown that at Crystal Palace, especially since Mark Gay kind of left. I'm not saying he's of the Mark Gay level in terms of the leadership, but he can do that, that kind of role. I do think he is someone who he's a bit of a no-nonsense, at times in terms of his defending, can also be quite front-footed. As I mentioned before, he has got that pace, can defend in channels, positionally, I think he's a decent defender as well. And I think coming to a team like Liverpool, I just think he would step it up a level, currently away with France at the World Cup as well. And I just think if you're just looking at like an overall package for me, I don't know what the exact fee for someone like him would actually be, but I can't imagine it being too expensive, if I'm being super honest with you. And I think it just seems like a no-brainer for me personally. Again, I don't know how Iraola wants his centre-backs. I think he's somewhat comfortable on the ball. I'm not going to sit here and lie and think, he's amazing on the ball. Like, he's not of the level of, say, Van Heck on the ball. I don't think he's of that kind of level, but I think he's good enough. I mean, we had Konate there who wasn't amazing on the ball. So I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem, moving forward. So he's definitely kind of my number one pick when I'm thinking of centre backs. Again, let me know your thoughts in the comment section in regards to who your kind of number one pick, would be. And the other player is Levi Colwill. Levi Colwill, yes, Levi Colwill. I know he's had his injuries. I know he's had his issues in regards to that. To say that he's had a brilliant season, no, I think that would be a lie. Chelsea have been absolutely dog doo-doo. So he hasn't shined, amongst that in the games that he kind of has played. When I do look at someone like him, again, I think he's quite young. He's 23 years of age. I just look at someone like Levi Colwill, and I think as much as he's 23, and again, we are talking about having experience. Obviously, he's got that top level of experience anyway. He's got that England experience as well, can play left back, which I think is actually quite important moving forward, having multifunctional kind of players, especially at the back. Obviously, Maxence Lacroix, I don't look at him as someone who can play right back or any other position other than centre back. So maybe you could look at someone like a Levi Colwill instead, someone who can fill in another position if needs be. But also, I just think he's a really, really good, centre back. He's comfortable in possession, as we've seen. Obviously, he's played played at Brighton, so we already know he's already got that kind of schooling. So that I'm not really too concerned when it comes to things like that. To say that he's fully mature, no, I'm not going to lie and say he is. I do think at times he does show a level of naivety. I do think that would change moving to a new club. I think he's quite comfortable at Chelsea at this current moment in time, and with the constant changes with Chelsea's team in a general sense, I think that obviously also plays its part. But I do think he's a solid centre back. left-footed as well, can play obviously on that left-hand side. Again, a position that we're going to need. I just think he's really, really solid, and I think he would provide a level of balance in that back line being left-footed. I know it's a, I guess, somewhat small thing for some people, but for me, I do feel like it is something that is, you know, relatively important, you know, moving forward. And he's definitely a player I've 100% rated. I wanted to sign him when, you know, he was going back to Chelsea from Brighton after his loan spell. Obviously couldn't get him then. And I still look at him now and think, no, why not? Why not? Again, I don't know what that fee would look like, so I'm not gonna, you know, throw out numbers or anything like that. But he's definitely a player that I look at and think Liverpool should be looking at him. Now, again, there are others, and I know loads of people like Schlotterbeck. He's not really my kind of flavor. I don't really look at Schlotterbeck like that. Again, not to say he's rubbish, not to say he's poor, none of that at all. Just not really my flavor in terms of when I look at a centre back. I think, nah, he's all right, you know, kind of thing. I prefer to have Levi Colwill, and I would definitely prefer to have Maxence Lacroix over someone like Schlotterbeck. But again, if you've got Schlotterbeck in, not really a problem. Again, another experienced, you know, centre-back, German international, played at a high level as well, comfortable in possession, can fill in a couple of positions. I guess somewhat comfortable playing in different formations as well. Not too well versed on Dortmund. Big up to Savage. He's probably the best person to ask in regards to that. But yeah, again, he'd be another decent option. But the two that I'm going to go with is obviously Levi Colwill and Maxence Lacroix. Those are the two players I think could come into Liverpool and just almost just help with the nurturing and the development, and also helping Liverpool into this kind of new transition under the new manager. But like I said, I'd love to know what everybody thinks in regards to the kind of players you want Liverpool to sign at centre-back. Like I said before, I do think, you know, we have a problem in that position. I do think it's an area that Liverpool do need to sort out very, very quickly. If they do it, I don't know. Do they see that as a need? I really don't know. We know how Liverpool stay. You know what I mean? Like, it's always one of them kind of things, man. We're always trying to second guess as to what Liverpool are all about. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section in regards to the centre-back situation. Who would you sign? Let me know. Keep the same energy. Stay blessed. I'll catch you guys real soon. Peace.